Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show, brought to you by DataStax Academy, where we bring you the latest news and interview technical experts to help you succeed at building large-scale distributed systems.
Hey, it's Jeff Carpenter. I'm live in the studio again with Kathryn Erickson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Kat. She is our Director of Strategic Partnerships here at DataStax. And we have brought her in today to talk about Docker. Everyone's doing it. Well, is everyone doing it? I don't know, but it's certainly popular right now. And we want to get to the bottom of why are people using Docker in particular for distributed databases? And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? And also there's a little bit of an announcement that we have to make. That's
I'm excited for that as well.
That's coming out. So, okay, let's jump right into it.
Okay.
So let's start about talking for those of you who may not know, what is Docker?
Sure. So you can think about Docker as the next evolution of virtual machines. It's this immutable packaging of everything that you need to run a piece of software with really good and tight resource management.
Gotcha. Okay, so how does that compare to other virtualization technologies that we've used in the past? What's the distinctive?
Sure. So Docker takes advantage of some things in Linux to really restrict resource usage. They use C groups and namespaces, and you can think about that as the physical and logical segmentation of resources in a system. When you think about a virtual machine, you have this set amount of resources and space that are used to run a physical machine virtualized on a host. And when you think about a Docker image, let's say that you're running 2 instances of DataStax Enterprise on a host, and you're running that using a Docker image.
Okay.
So you're actually only running one Ubuntu process with DSE installed as in a layer on top of that. And when you run the container, you just have a writable layer on top of that image. So it's a really efficient use of those resources.
Right. Okay. So that's what I think of it. I agree as that the value proposition of Docker is that it's very efficient in its resource usage, and there is that ease of use that goes along with it for a great developer experience that I think has made it real popular. So let's see. The key controversial question that we should dive into here is there's a lot of discussion that's been back and forth about whether databases and your data tier is a good fit for containers. So where do you stand on this issue?
I'm in the middle. I think it depends on the organization and their use case. And I understand the argument for and the argument against. When you think about the folks that are saying you shouldn't do this, it's not easy. When you think about a distributed database, you have state in terms of the data that's going into the database and the configurations as well. And our customers make changes to configurations in production. When you have a spike in traffic, times of the year could sway how your system is used, what your heap settings might be. These are changes to production systems. And when you think about Docker containers, you think about something that's locked down and immutable.
It's supposed to be immutable, so you really don't want to be changing your configuration, or you shouldn't be.
Right. And so the thoughts around this have changed over the last couple years. When you think about a Docker container, you think about a single process that's followed for that container. And if that process dies, DataStax Enterprise dies, and that container with it dies. So you want one single process per container. And when you think about something like DataStax Enterprise that's got like Cassandra, Spark, Solar, Graph capabilities. You think about
That's not one process.
It's not one process.
You just named 3 or 4, right?
Right, but the same principle applies. If the main process dies, the container should die as well, and that's how DataStax Enterprise would handle that in a bare metal system. So we need to be able to manage the database files outside of the container. We need to be able to manage configurations that could change over time. But there's a lot of benefit to having that immutable packaging of the software. So DSE is not going to be the first thing that you containerize in your environment.
Probably not. Right.
Probably not.
Okay.
But with the right Docker expertise, with the right database expertise, it is something that the technology is mature enough to handle.
Okay, and what about volume management? I know that one of the things about containers is that, they are very dispensable. So one of the concerns that I have, even in running Docker with our killer video reference application on my own desktop, is, I need to, I either need to configure kind of the external volume storage for my data, or I have to be really careful not to do my Docker Compose down and throw away all my data that I've been building up for days.
Right. You can talk about this in different ways depending on how you're using Docker containers and which database you're containerizing. Yeah. With Cassandra and with DataStax, we follow the principle of local storage, local fast storage is best. And Docker provides a few ways to achieve using local and fast storage and storing your data outside of the container. So you can use host volumes, and you can set that by a single file or a single directory, which you attach to the container. And then there's a lot of storage plugins now that make using shared storage with containers more efficient. So if your database supports that route, works well in that environment, those options are maturing as well. I will say, though, just like you said, if you're using host volumes, that is a place where troubleshooting gets difficult fast. And right. So what we're trying to do is make that easier. And it's a usability feature, and depending on where you stand and how to use Docker, you may use this way and embrace it or not. But what we're saying is we know that DataStax Enterprise has upwards of 30 configuration files that a customer could change. You wouldn't really see somebody changing that many configuration files, but they're there.
Right.
And if we want to put out a product, we have to make it uniform and applicable to all of our customers. And so what we're doing is offering this configuration folder. So you map a host volume to, I think it's /mount/conf, maybe it's just /conf. But you can put in that folder any of these 30 configuration files. And then internally, we map those to the immutable original versions in the container. So each time the service or container starts, those configuration files are mapped into the container. And then you can use regular configuration management to control those within the host volumes.
Okay. So as excited as I am about all of that you just described, what I just realized is that you're talking about configuration files and things that we're doing to make the usability experience of deploying DataStax Enterprise in a Docker container to be easier.
Right.
Okay, so we're doing this now. Like we're in the container business.
We are doing this.
So yeah, what's happening? Why? What are we doing with DataStax Enterprise in Docker, and why now?
So for years we thought, should we be doing this? And finally our customers told us, yes, you should be doing this.
We did start listening to them. We do listen.
Yeah, we absolutely do listen. We've provided Docker guidance and best practices in the past, and the feedback from customers was that it wasn't enough. And so what we're about to provide is 3 Docker images, as well as public access to the GitHub repo, which any company or any user that wants to customize those images can clone and customize from there.
Oh, that is awesome. Okay, so yeah, there have been sort of unofficial images that have been available. Luke Tillman, one of our evangelists, had a couple of that have been pretty popular. Little plug
really
for Luke.
Popular.
Yes. So do we have any statistics for that? Like how much are people using DSE on Docker?
Okay, so as much as I want to say we listen to our customers, we have to look at the market data as well.
Yeah.
And so we want to look at the market data across distributed databases that are in our space, as well as Cassandra and DataStax Enterprise.
Okay.
So
yeah, let's broaden it a little.
Yeah. So DataStax Enterprise has been downloaded more than 1 million times without ever having an official image from the company.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so Docker tracks pulls or downloads, and the number that they track goes up to 10 million. So after 10 million, you don't really know.
Yeah,
Between 10 and 1 billion, we don't really know. And so Cassandra and the different versions that are available on Docker Hub, which is kind of the universe where you can download any Docker images, I think last I counted was around 22 million pools, but somewhere between 22 million and infinity.
Okay.
You don't really know the number after that.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's just public repository pools. That's nothing to say for any private repositories in corporate environments, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Or Docker private repositories. Any company that's doing their CI or development within Docker, we don't have access to those numbers either.
Right. Okay. In other words, this is happening all the time.
It's happening all the time. Our customers want it. The market data shows us that that's where customers want to find our product.
Gotcha. So who else is doing this? We're not the only ones that are kind of taking this step, right?
Right.
Yeah, like what's the broader trend in the industry here with respect to distributed databases and Docker?
Sure. So even the largest players in the relational world are going this route as well. Docker's had Docker Hub for years now, and last year they launched Docker Store. And that got the attention of more of the enterprise players in the space. So you see Oracle is in Docker Store with some offerings in Docker Hub.
Okay.
But then you see all the players, Couchbase, Mongo, Hortonworks, Cloudera. Most of the companies in our space have at minimum their tooling in Docker Hub or Store, but usually now even the flagship products.
Okay, gotcha. And let's, I want to jump into that and talk about that a little bit. What's that distinction between Docker Hub and Docker Store? Because I think might be a little bit confusing for people that aren't intimately familiar with these different ways of accessing images. Can you talk to that?
Sure. At the highest level, we're most familiar with Docker Hub. If you have Docker installed, you can search for Docker images through the command line. You see everything that's listed in Hub. Anybody can publish images to Docker Hub.
Okay.
Docker Store offers some features that are interesting to an enterprise company like ours. They do security scanning of the images before we publish them. They offer certification of the images, and that makes sure that you've built this image in line with their best practices. They also offer support to customers that are looking for somebody to support the Docker piece. So right now we're offering our images for non-production environments, but when we do offer them for production, our customers would have the opportunity to get support for the Docker portion from Docker and the DSE portion from DataStax, and maybe somewhere in between. That's something that will work out over time.
Okay, I really like that though, because I do think that having come from a non-startup kind of environment, a more corporate environment where we want configuration control. We don't want to just be using some random Docker image that was on Hub that who knows who put that together or what's actually in that image without having, but the ability to have that certification of, this is not only from the actual company that provides this database, but it's been certified for Docker best practices. I think that's a definite win.
Yes, it is a couple extra steps, but once you subscribe to an image, it associates the username with the image, and you can pull that image just like you do any other Docker image from that point forward.
Okay, so I want to circle back on a couple of things because we've been talking about a lot of details. First of all, you mentioned that there are 3 images that we're going to be providing. Why don't you enumerate what those are?
Sure. So DataStax Enterprise will be the first image, and that will be in Docker Store. And then we'll have Ops Center, which is our management GUI, and Studio, which is the development interface, available in Docker Hub.
Okay, excellent. So what's the distinction then? The DSE, the core, is going to be in the store, and the others are in the hub. And what's the rationale there?
Sure. So you think about the flagship product as being in store. They're all built from the same base image. So we want the security scanning of the main image, and we want that to go into store. It also helps us track who's using these. You register for an account in Docker Store, and it helps us understand the rate of adoption from customers versus those that are evaluating the product. And then it makes sense to put the tooling in Docker Hub. You wouldn't really use Ops Center or Studio without DataStax Enterprise.
Oh, okay.
So there's no reason to make those difficult to get. Grab those from Hub once you have DSE.
Okay, so we're not tracking, we don't have that same level of tracking that we're looking to do, and we want it in the store so that we can support you, but it's less important.
Yeah, and that's what we see across the industry. We see flagship products in either store or store and Hub, and tooling always in Hub.
Okay, Great. That clarified for me because I always wondered why companies did things that way. Okay. So, and you mentioned that we are supporting DSE and Ops Center and Studio running in Docker for development environments.
That's right.
Okay. What about production?
Right. So we expect to learn some things from launching these images. We expect them to be very attractive to developers and those pursuing Docker in non-production environments. And we're going to use what we learn from those to make sure that we're prepared to launch these for production environments. So we're going to start with a 60-day trial, and we're going to iterate on these and see how it goes. We don't have a timeline for production yet. I'm confident in what we've built and how it's going to be received in the industry. I'm excited to see the initial feedback. We're looking for folks to file issues in GitHub, directly in the repo, or in DataStax Academy Slack. And as we get that feedback, we'll have a better idea of what the production timeline would be.
Nice. Okay, good. And you've been hearing from me because I've been playing with these official images, the early access internal version, and I think it's gone really, really well. I'm really excited about the offering. So where do I go now if I'm interested? Let's say I've gotten all excited to hear that DSE is now officially available in Docker. What do I do? Sure.
So there's a blog on our website that will point you to the images, to the Academy tutorials, and to everything you need to get started. You should, depending on the timing of this release, you should see the images now in Docker Store and Hub. They're there. Search for DataStax. Search for the product names. They're available.
Okay. Excellent. So let's get started and get downloading these Docker images and get us your feedback. We're excited about this. We're excited about doing distributed databases in Docker the right way.
The right way.
Pushing this conversation forward in industry as well. All right, Kat. Well, it's been a pleasure having you out today. I'd love to have you back in the future because I have all kinds of questions as sort of a follow-on to this that we didn't even have time to get to about orchestration. What do I do with all these containers now that I have them? How can I manage kind of this environment at scale where I'm starting and stopping multiple containers and provisioning all sorts of stuff? Can you help me out with that?
Absolutely. That's the natural follow-on question from our customers, and I think it's a good topic to cover.
Excellent. Okay, so look forward to another episode coming soon with Kat, and we'll talk about orchestration. Thanks for watching the Distributed Data Show.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us again for the Distributed Data Show. We love your feedback, so go to the Distributed Data Show page on DataStax Academy and tell us what you think. You can also find us on the DataStax Academy YouTube channel or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get great podcasts. While you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.